Okay, raindrops. I know it's late on a Friday night, and I'm pretty sure you guys had plans. So I don't take it for granted that you guys hopped onto Reality with the King Live as Courtney Parker and I are going to do a special edition of reality crime stories based on the breaking news. We have Judge Tyranny, who is back as well. So I'm going to bring them in a second, but I want to make sure that I give enough time so that everybody is here because we haven't done a live in a very long time when it came to a situation like this. So I'll do my shout outs to the raindrops. Hi, Candace Speaks. We are all rooting for you, Wendy. I saw that. Um, I'm late because I was doing my research. So before I bring in Courtney Parker and Judge Tyranny, I do want to say this. The reason why I wanted to make sure to have this conversation later in the day is because I wanted to make sure, out of respect to my friendship with Dr. Wendy, that and Eddie, that I wasn't just going to talk about it immediately after it came out. I'm fully aware that when this news hit this morning, that more stuff's going to come out later in the day. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to just talk about stuff that I wasn't fully informed about. Okay. This is serious. So I wanted to take this seriously. And I want to make sure that I did all of my research. I want to make sure that I've read every single document. It's the reason why I wanted to make sure to bring on a sitting judge, Judge Tyranny, to really break down not the case because the case is still pending. So she's unable, obviously, to break down the case. It's pending, but to answer some legal questions that I know that you guys wanted to know. So I wanted to make sure that before I did this live, I had all the information. So once again, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your Friday evening to hop on this live. So I feel like we have everyone in here, and let's get right into it. Let's bring in my co-host Courtney Parker and Judge Tyranny.
Hello, good evening.
How's it going? Courtney, you're muted.
I said, hi, Carlos. Hi, Raindrops.
How's it going? So listen, let's get right into it. The raindrops have been waiting for hours to have this conversation. So what I want to do first, Courtney and Judge Tyranny, is I want to break down exactly what the court documents are stating so that everybody is fully aware of what is going on. Okay. So, raindrops, listen up because we are here to report on the facts and to also answer any questions that you guys may have in the chat. Okay. So, first thing first, this is the reported timeline. All right. April of 2024, the Osefos reported a burglary at their Finsburg, Maryland home while they were on vacation in Jamaica. They told law enforcement their bedroom and closets were ransacked and that designer jewelry and handbags were stolen. The alleged losses were over $400,000 worth of luxury goods. Per the court documents and media reports, this is when the investigation was conducted, and these are the findings. Investigators said the supposed entry point, a bathroom window 9 feet above a deck, showed no signs of forced entry. ADT and Ring camera footage did not show suspicious activity during the period of the reported break-in. Police later discovered some of the stolen items, alleged stolen items, had been returned for refunds months before the burglary. Okay. Social media posts allegedly showed Dr. Wendy wearing jewelry claimed to be stolen. All right. Investigators then executed a search warrant and reportedly found at least 15 items that were part of the original stolen list. So, based upon that, this is what occurred in the timeline, and these are the charges that has happened as of October of this year, which is this month. The Carroll County Grand Jury indicted both Wendy and Eddie Osefo. Wendy Osefo is being charged with 7 counts of insurance fraud, 8 counts of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, 1 count of making a false statement to a police officer. Eddie is being charged with 9 counts of insurance fraud, 8 counts of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, 1 count of making a false statement to a police officer. So, before I bring in Courtney and the judge, I do want to make sure that I also explain to the raindrops what the police is alleging that they discovered. Okay, they are alleging, and I do want to read this verbatim based on the actual document that was recently revealed to TMZ. So I want to take the time out to read that so you guys can follow along in terms of what exactly happened. All right, so here we go. All right. So, not my light going off, child. Here we go. All right. So, this is the actual court document that I'm reading from. So, this is what they are alleging. On Thursday, October 9th, 2025, the defendant was indicted by the grand jury for 7 counts of insurance fraud. I read you guys all that. And a warrant was issued and bail was set at $50,000. I told you guys what the allegations were already. Based on the court documents, this is what they're alleging right now. They're saying that investigation determined that on April 8th, the Osefos initiated 3 separate insurance claims for the burglary and theft, traveler's insurance, jeweler's mutual insurance, and home site insurance company for the alleged losses suffered while they were away. They're alleging that Eddie gave recorded statements to 2 of the insurance companies regarding a list of stolen items he provided. He was asked whether any of the items on the list had been returned, which he denied. He was asked if he had other insurance but failed to disclose the home site and jewelers that he was also making a claim for traveler's insurance. They both signed a sworn statement of loss, which was notarized. The total amount of loss claim on the sworn statement was for the loss of $2,500 for the building and $450,000 estimated for contents, personal property. He included an inventory of reported stolen items along with the receipts. That claim was denied. Failure to disclose the policy with travelers insurance. In the original claim submitted on April 8th to travelers, Eddie confirmed that he and his wife were wearing their anniversary bands when the loss occurred. However, Eddie called travelers insurance on April 10th and said he needed to update their claim, stating his wife's gold diamond anniversary band was missing. That same day, travelers insurance settled that claim for $25,380, which included the replacement price of the band, which was $4,500. One more thing, after the initial reported claim on April 11th, they both signed and submitted letters to the Jewelers Mutual Insurance claiming the burglary occurred and items were reported stolen. At the request of Jewelers Mutual Insurance, the Osefos provided an initial list of 57 stolen items. Included on that list was Wendy's gold diamond anniversary band. that was already reported in the traveler's insurance claim. On April 22nd, Eddie was interviewed during a recorded call and did not make any mention of the jewelry claim or payout with the travelers. They're saying that deputies were suspicious of the circumstances of the burglary and the records from stores where some of the items were purchased, along with social media and email accounts. And based on their investigation, they're alleging that they found that the items that they claim were stolen were returned before the burglary. And they're alleging that a ring that they said was stolen, they found Wendy to have worn that in a social media post. As of now, they are released on bond, and now we're here to talk about exactly what is going on. So, Courtney, tons of questions to ask. I want to start by asking Judge Tierney this. So, Raindrops, we are fortunate enough to have a sitting judge who's able to break down the law to us. Again, this isn't for us to have colorful commentary. I want to just stick to the law and stick to the facts. So Courtney has her questions. I'll start by asking this.
Okay.
Judge, the 9 counts of insurance fraud, but only 8 counts of conspiracy insurance fraud. Are those two different things? Like, what are the difference between counts of insurance fraud, but other counts of conspiracy of insurance fraud?
So I will just repeat again that I cannot speak on the merits or the facts of this case, so I can't specifically say 8 versus 9 or 9 versus 8. I can't give legal advice, but what I will tell you is that anytime there is the allegations of a felony, it has to be presented before a grand jury. And during the grand jury, this is not innocent or guilt. This is just simply, does the prosecutor have enough evidence to move forward? And based on whatever comes from the grand jury, they determine how much evidence the prosecutor has put forth to actually bring charges. So in order to bring the charges forward, they have to present evidence to move forward to the grand jury. So depending on whatever was, and what's really key about a grand jury indictment is that it is secret at the time so that the witnesses are protected. So at this time, you wouldn't technically know what was presented to the grand jury and what they decided until the charges are actually filed. And those charges would have been filed based on their conclusions from the evidence presented.
Okay. I do have a question because we all were very invested in the press conference today, where the prosecutor made it very clear his intentions for filing, as well as the sheriff surrounding this, their intentions on supporting the claims against Wendy and her husband. My question becomes, one of the things that stuck out to me was how their investigation started immediately, from when officers were boots on the ground at the house to questions and red flags posing, how an alleged burglar got into a second story open window in a bathroom, like all of the things that rose suspicion for officers at the scene are now part of this indictment and pending investigation as we speak. So when we look at that, when evidence of that magnitude is presented, and it feels as though law enforcement felt like there were things kind of tricky and suspicious immediately, how then is that going to potentially come back to haunt the couple now, as they're presenting new evidence saying we suspect fraud. We not only suspect fraud, but investigators from the insurance claim, as well as our personal officers, have started to scour your social media. We're looking at the crime scene, and we're sending investigators back on the crime scene to make sure that it is, your statements were reasonable and rational, which they're now discovering are not. What are we looking at in terms of them building a case and a case with prosecutors sticking?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat it again because I think it's worth repeating.
Mhm.
We have to be very clear to understand that a grand jury indictment has nothing to do with proof of innocence or guilt. It is simply enough evidence from an investigation that allows a case to move forward, where we now actually go into the specifics of a case, the evidence, the veracity of the evidence, the credibility of the witnesses. And so it's very, very important anytime you're dealing with a case. I mean, it sounds cliche until you're actually in that moment. You are innocent until proven guilty. The prosecutor has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty of the charges. Now, of course, investigators and prosecutors do their investigations and they take their time. But anytime there is an allegation of wrongdoing, an investigation is going to occur and you are going to follow the evidence. These are conclusions still, but they have to be proven in a court of law, and it has to happen through the presentation of evidence in court. And a lot of times, I said this to you all before, a lot of times, especially with high profile cases, public opinion will come to a conclusion. No evidence has been reported, no explanations have been presented. And so we are coming to these conclusions through public opinion that simply just may not be true, or they may be incomplete. And I just do want to caution people always, whenever you're talking about allegations, especially allegations that are serious and could possibly carry up to, if it's a state charge, anywhere from 10 years in custody, a federal charge up to 20 years in custody, we should not jump to conclusions. We should let the evidence take us and lead the case, and only rely on what is presented in court, because there is a different standard in court than what is going to be put out into the media.
I want to stop you there. So, Courtney, before we ask this question,
Mhm.
I do want to ask you this. I everyone knows I am in law school. I go to the University of Reality with the King Law. So I'm trying my best to like understand this. And what I have learned by doing the law series that I'm doing is the fact that it's one thing for the prosecutors to detail their discovery along with the sheriff's department to say we have enough evidence. They take it to the grand jury. The grand jury then, and stop me when I'm wrong, Judge Tierney. The grand jury then decides, yes, you have proven at this stage, right? You have proven
No,
at this.
no. Okay, so let me
No,
restate what you
I'm sorry.
said. Okay, go ahead.
Not proven. The grand jury felt like you have delivered enough of a case. You built enough of a
To build a
case.
case, right?
You built enough of a case in order for us to move forward with an arrest.
To indict, to see. So let's use an analogy. The grand jury basically says there's enough smoke for you to see if it's a fire.
Okay.
There are no conclusions. There's no evidence of proof or guilt. And it's not the sheriff's department that would actually present to the grand jury. The sheriff does the investigation and turns over the information from the investigation to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor office then presents that to the grand jury, and the grand jury decides if enough evidence has been presented to move forward with pursuing charges.
And that's why you're innocent until proven guilty, because as of now, listen, as of now, Eddie and Wendy are innocent because they have yet to be proven guilty. These are just charges. So the next step is
Allegations, yes.
Right.
they're allegations, but they're still being again, I'm going to ask you this.
Right.
Where they're being charged. So is there a difference between being charged and allegations? Or are they the same in one?
They're not the same in one, but they can be synonymous. So
Okay.
the what they have been alleged of illegal activity, and now they have been charged, and now the actual prosecutor has to prove their case, because
Beyond
the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt,
Mhm.
always in a criminal case.
Okay.
And that is a very high burden of proof. So that's no easy feat.
Right. As we've
I
seen
did
with
want
some of these other cases, that just because you're charged in court, it is your responsibility, the prosecution's responsibility to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's correct. It's their burden.
We did have, and according to the press conference today, the prosecutor in this case feels very confident that they will be able to prove. He acknowledged that it's his responsibility. The burden lies with him, but he is confident that the charges that they brought against them, he will be able to prove. He was very adamant and confident within the press conference today. So we're going to be very interested to see how this all unfolds. One of the questions from the Raindrops, AB, we see your question, and it's a good one. Did they know that they were being investigated from the jump? Do we think that they knew they were under investigation?
That would probably be a question for Carlos. He would be more in tune with what, maybe their state of mind is. Again, those are specifics to the case that I
Okay.
cannot speak to.
Yeah.
I can repeat that a grand jury is in secret. So
Okay.
evidence is presented in grand jury to secret. That doesn't mean that in any case, any witness hasn't been interviewed.
Got
But
it.
you would have to come to a conclusion. If you take an example of a missing wife. So if a husband didn't actually participate in it, but he is going to be questioned by the investigators, is it reasonable that he may deduce that he is being investigated? Yes, because generally all the time, the first person we think of when someone goes missing is the closest person to them. But there may not be anything specific that says we are being you are actually being investigated until they state that to them or come and present charges from the grand jury.
Judge Tierney, can you explain to us the difference between fraud, conspiracy, and false statement charges?
And I apologize because you did ask me that when we opened up, and I kind of was explaining something else. But I think that here's what's very the second two charges are related to the big charge. So the fraud is the charge. And
Okay.
that is when you have knowingly given false information or misrepresentation and someone has relied on it
Okay.
and you have caused harm. The key in the fraud to commit insurance fraud is intent. You have to knowingly do it. So then there are other the charges that you mentioned to me with the
Conspiracy.
conspiracy is very simple. It's just two or more people get together and decide to commit a crime.
Okay.
And lastly, making a false report is exactly what it sounds like. When you talk to the authorities, you did not tell the truth, and especially if you do it under oath or a sworn statement.
Okay.
And the false report is generally most of the time going to be a misdemeanor, except in federal cases, it can be a felony, lying to the federal government.
Got it.
And the thing is, as of now, this is a state crime, not federal. So as of now, it's a state crime. Could it go to the federal level though, Judge Tierney? And if what has to happen for a state crime to reach federal in any case
Right.
of fraud?
Well, it has to actually be something that is going to break federal law. So there are certain things like a city ordinance charge or a state charge that is related specifically to your jurisdiction, your city, your state. Sometimes the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction,
Okay.
so
Where insurance,
jaywalking, they're not going to have jurisdiction. But in a case where we're talking about something like fraud, if there is any commerce that crosses over interstate, then you're going to see concurrent jurisdiction between a state and the federal government. Generally, they're going to have a discussion about who's proceeding, because you always want to think about, in prosecution of cases, making sure that you're allocating public funds in a responsible manner. So it's very unlikely that you would see a state and federal prosecution at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I do have a question. And Carlos, do you mind rereading the charges specifically so that we can really understand? Because I think when we hear the bigger charge of fraud, and now at least I do, have a better understanding, and I hope the raindrops do as well, have a better understanding of the conspiracy part. But when we listen to the sheriffs during the press conference say that actual man hours went into investigating a crime that didn't just happen to Wendy and her husband, but could also have affected the neighborhood and the community at large, that's what they take into account. How then does those charges against filing a false police report or giving false statements to the police, how does that kind of come in play when the police are thinking about it, the larger scope? They're spending time, resources, and energy looking for someone who just quite frankly didn't exist. How does that become an even more serious charge, Judge? If you can.
So again, a false statement to the police is always going to, be a crime. But generally, if it's a state case versus a federal case, it's going to be seen as sometimes a lower level case, if that makes sense.
It does.
It,
A
it, it, it,
lower level
it-
charge to a bigger charge, though, makes it different. Does a lower level charge attached to a much larger charge make it carry more weight, potentially, when somebody brings something like that in front of a judge?
Well, every case is going to be decided on the merits and facts of that case.
Okay.
And so it's really hard to speculate on what would happen in a specific case. I remember one time a woman in the country, she made a false report about being kidnapped and missing, and it used a lot of manpower and time. And so that jurisdiction came down really hard on her because they wanted to send a message that when you make false statements, you take away from the police actually investigating crimes that could save lives. And I think that generally that is why it's such a big deal when you make a false report, because you're taking away from when the police could be out saving someone else's life or mitigating large damage. But it is still a serious charge on its own. Again, I didn't see the press conference. I don't know anything about the facts specifically of this case. I am here just really for educational commentary, because when things like this happen, especially in the public eye, it's very important for the public to understand, because I always say that you have to know these things for your own personal life. The difference is that I'm not sure if it was a misdemeanor or felony charge. So that is what would differentiate whether it was more serious or equally serious. Did they charge, or were they charged with a misdemeanor or a felony?
Yes, and we'll have Courtney talk about that too, because one thing I want to bring up is this. They are alleging that they were able to get into Eddie's emails. And they said that they found an email where he allegedly told Wendy to up the amount of the claims, adding things more to the claims so that they were able to go a little bit over the maximum amount of what the home insurance agency was going to provide. What I want to ask you about that is this. Does law enforcement have to get some sort of warrant to tap into your emails? Like, how were they able to find these? How is law enforcement able to find emails without your permission?
Yes, you absolutely have a warrant. It has to have a warrant, and it has to be executed by a judge. It may not necessarily be the judge in the case, but it has to be executed by a judge, because a judge has to review the information that you have presented, stating the reason why you need to actually collect this evidence. And so, a sheriff's department or a prosecutor or an investigator is always going to have to get a warrant. But again, I go back to making sure that the public, especially the raindrops, are not making any conclusions at this point, because, it's like having a one-sided conversation. They have put forth and said a lot of things, but now on the other side, the defense side, they get to review everything. They get to review evidence, the veracity, the authenticity of it. They get to review the relevance of it. They get to review if it was done procedurally, and what is going to actually be included for a jury and a judge to decide ultimately what happens in the case. So in pretrial negotiations, you go through actually going through all of the motions and presenting the evidence to say, this is what will be allowed to be presented in this case in court. And that is super important. So again, I caution the public in any case, please allow the facts and the evidence to guide your journey. Do not jump ahead of the journey, but do be educated so that you understand exactly what is going on, and that you are not making conclusions, apprehensively or prematurely.
Can we talk about, here's what I find fascinating, and I know this kind of goes to your question, Micah Smith 04. One of the things that is being alleged is that they double dipped. So they filed multiple insurance claims on the same item. And that drove up the price of what they actually collected on through several different insurance entities. What is shocking in all of this is that he is an attorney. So there were a lot of risk involved. And will there be any kind, I know you're saying don't jump to the conclusions, but it's very hard not to at least be conscious of the fact that an attorney, a prominent attorney who's and his wife, who is very visible on reality TV, they are, fan favorites, that they didn't have some idea. It's not, me or just some regular person filing a claim. It's somebody who actually has a clear understanding of the law, and also consciously doing something that could appear as fraudulent, or just something shady.
So I think the question is this, though: is it? And I want to simplify for the raindrops, because again, I just want to ask the question for the raindrops to know: is it illegal to claim a stolen item on more than one insurance company?
That would be inconsistent with the law.
Okay.
But again, I want to make sure we are talking in generalities. And you are making conclusions because you're stating that someone has consciously done something. It's impossible to speak to someone's state of mind. That is what the legal process
Okay.
is for. That is what court is for, because intent must be proven. But I'm a judge. Carlos is in the law school of raindrops. the
I got my law degree from Law and Order University. Yeah.
Humans make mistakes. You cannot criminalize mistakes.
Oh.
There has to be intent. You have to knowingly and willingly break the law. You have to knowingly and willingly mislead someone. And that is why we must let the process lead in the courtroom, not play out in the media. Headlines sound great, but facts and evidence are what lead in a courtroom.
Yes, no, agree. And that's the reason why I want to make sure to do this episode with you, because again, I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to get all the facts that was presented, just based. And when I say facts, I'm not saying that what they're alleging is factual. I'm meaning facts in terms of things that were in the court documents. I want to make that very clear when I say that. In addition to that, it was more so of the generalities of, for anybody, if you double dip on insurance claim, whoever you are, and was that illegal? Now you answered that. Listen, you have to prove that this person had intent to do it. And I think at the end of the day, look, the reason why people are saying you're innocent to proven guilty, and why some people are even saying, well, why was Wendy and Eddie smiling in their mugshots? Look, Eddie is a lawyer, and perhaps there's way more information that we will find out as this case proceeds that really warrants whether or not intent was involved in these allegations. What I do want to ask you is this: Eddie is a lawyer, he has a law degree. If any lawyer is convicted of a crime, whether it's a state crime, a federal crime, a misdemeanor, or not, is that something to where you are disbarred from it, or are there something that has to be to a high degree for that to happen?
Right.
So the first thing, again, I'm not aware. But if you are a lawyer and you actually graduate from law school, there are two things that happen. You have to actually pass the fitness test to sit for the bar, and then you have to sit for the bar and pass it. So I'm not sure if you're a practicing attorney, because people graduate from law school all the time and
Right.
they may not be practicing.
Oh.
So you have to be a practicing attorney licensed to a state in order to lose your license. So I just want to clarify
Yeah.
that in each state, you have to take a fitness test to sit for the bar examination. And then you actually
Right.
have to pass the bar examination. And that is how you become a practicing lawyer in that state. But absolutely, if you are charged with a crime and convicted,
Right.
that state bar is going to do an investigation and you will be given due diligence just like in any other process. But if any lawyer is convicted of a crime, depending on the nature of the crime, especially a felony crime, their their license is more than likely going to be revoked.
In that state, could they practice in another state?
It is state by state. So the
Okay.
states would have to decide. Let's say I am licensed in the state of Georgia. If I lose my license in the state of Georgia, I still have to go apply in another state. That's the fitness test I'm talking about,
Okay.
where they do basically a background check on you and check everything and say you can be trusted with someone else's life and financial matters.
That's a fitness test.
That's the fitness test. So you could go to law school
Right.
and not be allowed to sit for the bar examination. You have to pass the fitness test first.
And the fitness test is a background. It's like a background check.
It's a deep dive background check. And it is not just a background check that relates to criminality. It relates to your financial matters. Like, they want to make sure that anytime you're allowing someone to be entrusted with other people's lives and financial matters, that they are trustworthy. So if you like don't pay your bills on time or have multiple lawsuits filed against you, you might be denied to sit for the bar after going to law school for 3 years.
Wait, hold on. If I am in law school and in order for me to pass the fitness test, this background check is so deep that if you find that I pay my bills late, I could fail the fitness test?
You could fail the fitness test after 3 years of law school, and we don't apply until our 3rd year. And so you could have gone through that. But here's the thing, in a lot of states, it's not, it's like any other test. You can try again. So you can go resolve your matters and you can present your case again and come back and say, I have, been reformed. I've done this, and this. I've got my life on path. I understood through this process, and now I'm a better person, which is going to make me a better lawyer, because there are a lot of people in our community who have trouble not paying their bills. But it's a devastating thing, to be honest with you. It happened to a guy I knew in law school, and it was devastating to him.
So, Courtney, I do want to read this.
Okay. Go. Yeah, someone in the comments said it's a character as well as fitness test.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was very interesting because there was a distinction on the character. So your character is equally as important to this fitness test, correct?
Yes, it's the same thing. Okay. Character and fitness test. So it goes into your character, but which is why they use your financial background as a way to define your character. But they also use things like your school background. They use, your driving history. They review so many things in your life to make sure that you actually can be entrusted with the life and financial matters of the public.
Got it.
Yeah.
And we've said all that to say that it's very unlikely, if I lose my license in one state, that another state would actually grant me
a license,
the right to actually try and pursue my license in their state.
Is there going to be a way? And again, we are dealing with a lot of hypotheticals because this is just unfolding. But in the event, there is a redeeming quality here, right? Like, even if this comes to show that he's actually guilty of this, loses his license, only if he's a practicing attorney. I thought that was a good note and takeaway that I will take away. Is there like a grace period, or is there a period of time where you could reapply for your license even after something like this happens? Should he be convicted?
It is going to be based on the state. So each state is going to have different requirements, just like they have different laws and penalties. So the state that, he applies to will depend.
I know one of the raindrops asked a question from a insurance adjuster. And the insurance adjuster in the comments stated that it is illegal to file multiple claims. And I do remember and recall my purse got stolen, my credit cards, things were in there. When I filled it out for my credit cards as well as my homeowner's insurance, they do ask you, if you filed a claim with another company, to list the things that you're claiming with that company versus what you're claiming there. Those documents, especially if you're in a state of, shock or dismay, can become confusing, because what you might be able to, what might be covered through, let's say, Amex, is not necessarily going to be covered through anything else that you've gotten stolen. So there is a good chance, considering that I really do hope that it was more confusing than just malicious, because those platforms can be right.
I think that, you just gave a great example of why intent is so important in fraud. Because, we're humans, we make human errors. Sometimes people don't understand the language. Sometimes there's miscommunication between family members or spouses. Sometimes the record keeping is a little sloppy. Again, the intent is really important.
That's a good question. So a raindrop asks, what's interesting about this is a married couple who are being charged for allegedly committing crimes within the same household, within the insurance, but they have different counts. What I will say is this: I'm not a lawyer, but what I will say, similarly to Teresa Giudice and Joe Giudice, raindrop, just so you all know, but I'll have the judge answer this if she wants to. But what I can say, based on my knowledge of Teresa and Joe, a married couple who both were arrested and charged and both sentenced to jail, they went to trial separately because, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Judge, the law views you as individuals. So you're not, in some cases. So I'm assuming in this case that Eddie and Wendy possibly will go to trial separately.
And is there
in any case, when there are co-defendants, you can have a trial. Again, we always are talking about the use of public funds. And so we always want to make sure that the government is responsibly spending the public's money, because the money belongs to the public in all of these cases. And so you have the right to try any co-defendant together, but equally, because these are criminal charges and each defendant has a right to their own defense, they can file for motions to separate their trials. So again, that's why you have to, and I just keep repeating this, you have to judge each case based on its own facts, merits, and circumstances.
Got it.
It's really hard to predict, which is why we shouldn't. We should really follow the evidence and just what is presented in court, including the motions, because that would be a motion that would be filed in court, either to move forward together or to separate the trials.
What I do want to get into is this. And first of all, Judge, thank you so much for your insights. I want to make sure that we spend time really dissecting the law, because like you said, there's so much information going out here that I want to make sure that we were able to sort of talk about the law instead of the salaciousness. Now, what I will say is, as we transition into more breaking news, Courtney Parker, who also is a reality TV producer, what came out tonight
I was hoping
is
you
the
would.
fact is the fact that there's a new show that's appearing, I believe, on Bravo and Peacock called Wife Swap.
Yep.
And Dr. Wendy is a part of Wife Swap. It has been reported today that the network has decided to pull that episode as of now.
Wow. And
As of now.
I was just reading that the they're also talking about delaying next week's premiere to the following week.
Well, no, it premieres on Sunday.
Right. The 14th premiere is now being possibly moved to next week.
Oh, you mean the premiere of Wife Swap? I'm sorry. Yes, Wife Swap. Yeah. So, okay. So what Courtney has said, she's right. So Wife Swap was supposed to premiere on October 14th, Raindrops, which is Tuesday. Courtney is saying that, yes, they pulled the episode with Wendy in it, and now they may be pushing back the premiere. The only thing I can assume as a producer is if they're pushing back the premiere, I wonder if Dr. Wendy was in the first episode.
Absolutely. And I'm saying that with certainty because we've all been there. When your show was supposed to premiere, there was all this media attention. Networks are very calculated in their rollout. So there's always the piggyback of promotion. Whoever is hot. I did a show recently and there was a tragedy surrounding one of our celebrities. This particular celebrity lost 2 family members within the same week of my show premiering. She was my first episode. We ended up having to move her to the 3rd episode because of all the promotion. We didn't want to be insensitive. The network didn't want to be insensitive. We needed to do immediate damage control. So if they were the first episode, which I'm very confident in assuming that they were, that's why they have to, recalibrate and they have to shuffle the episodes and make whatever number 2 was number 1 so that they don't mess up the network calendar and the show's calendar of production.
What is so interesting? Yeah, and it is. And listen, one of the Raindrops asked a good question, Carlos. Why would they do that? Why would a network pull the episode? So again, I'm speaking in generals. I didn't speak to a Bravo representative, but what I can say is, I think we have to look at it this way. Wife Swap is a very different show than Real Housewives, right? The Real Housewives, as we know, we saw the premiere episode of Potomac. We saw that it opened up with Karen getting out of jail for her DUI conviction. We saw that Teresa had to turn herself in, go to jail, was then cameras follow her coming back home. I think on Housewives, that may be something that, okay, let's follow the reality. The difference, Raindrops, between Housewives and Wife Swap, based on the show that was on, I believe it was Lifetime, if I'm not mistaken. That's a different show. It's different. It's more wholesome. It's also a show that, you're in these people's homes. That show is more comedy. It's more so like, oh, if I could live in your house one day, what would that feel like? So it's a very different show tonally than a Real Housewives. And I think the other thing too is, look, this is a brand new show. And the last thing you want for a brand new show, a series premiere, is this level of scandal. Now, granted, the Raindrops in the comments, but Carlos, the ratings will be high. I agree with you. But I think on some...
Anyway.
Yes. I'll answer a question, Mia Simone. I think in these cases, leave that back up for Mia Simone. I want to make sure I remember and read it directly. Wife Swap is a brand new show. So to have that type of, like Courtney said, controversy may not be appetizing for the advertisers.
I want to make a correction. Wife Swap is not a brand new show, but it's been
No.
Right. It's been off the air for a significant amount of time, so it's now coming back.
Right. I know, but the difference, right? But it's a brand new show for this network because they changed, right. And they also changed the creative. Is now right. housewives swapping with regular people.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we knew that. Mia Simone, Carlos, we really want to know, is Bravo still filming? Are we getting any of this for the season? You guys are so funny. No, they wrapped. They wrapped the show. They were not, listen, they were not filming at all this season. They wrapped the show. Now look, they also were not filming when Karen was sentenced. And as we saw, they got the cameras back when she was released and they weren't filming then. Now, do I think that they are going to film this? I think it's a high probability that we may, at the season finale of the Real Housewives of Potomac, whatever the ending scene is, I would not be surprised if it fades to black and it says X amount of weeks later, and then you see the girls reacting to this. You see Giselle and Ashley on the phone. You see the girls reacting to this like they did with Karen's DUI conviction. And then you get to see possibly Wendy and Eddie talk about it as much as they can based on the severity of this case. So I would not be surprised if cameras are back up, if not this weekend, on Monday.
This weekend.
You think this week? I mean,
Carlos, you would have us have cameras up right now at the courthouse and the press conference.
Yes. So, that's what I think is a probability of that happening. So look, raindrops. The biggest thing is this, though. Obviously, more information is going to be revealed. Again, I wanted to spend today's live focus just on what was presented to us from the press conference to the documents that were released to us, to have Judge Tierney, who actually was out of town, who was hanging out with her kids, and she took time out of her busy schedule to break down the legal jargon for us, because again, we just don't know what some of these things mean. And I think it's helpful to have someone of her stature on this platform to really break down things to us to a science. And look, obviously, the more information to come out, the more we'll talk about it. But I wanted this one to really feel like we were able to give you guys some really factual definition of some of the legal jargon that was in the court documents. Yeah.
And also,
and I appreciate you all.
Sorry. It's also good for us to know not to jump to conclusions, because one of the things that you really did harp on, and we will be students of this as well, is just allowing us to have some clarity, allowing us to not jump to conclusions, and just kind of breaking down some of the things that these alleged charges mean, and also the preparation for the defense to do just that, defend. Because we hear a lot from the prosecutors before we ever hear from the defense.
Yeah, and I just was going to say, I appreciate you all inviting me and doing this for the raindrops and the greater public. I say this to you all the time because, it was one of the reasons I wanted to be a judge. There were so many things that the people in my community didn't understand. I grew up in a low-income, impoverished community in Jacksonville, Florida. And it's so important for us to have information. So Carlos, you said, we're not doing the salacious. We are actually educating, making sure that people understand what is going on, because you just never know what will happen in your own life or your family's life. So I do appreciate you all making sure that you take your time. Of course, your jobs allow for you, or, encourage you to follow the headlines. But I love that you all are responsible in the way of educating the public at the same time. I think that is so important and to be actually commended.
Yes, no, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So listen, we will be back with more information, raindrops, but thank you guys for taking time out on your busy Friday night. And once again, I'll repeat it for the judge. You are innocent until proven guilty. So more to come when it comes to this case. So thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Judge Tierney. And raindrops, thank you. Have a great weekend. And look, Bell Collective is back tonight, okay? Episode 2 of Bell Collective is coming on at 8 o'clock.
My
all right?
favorite show.
It's Courtney's favorite show, Bell
My favorite
Collective,
show.
8 o'clock tonight. So, Raindrops, I got 45 minutes to put the kids to bed, to warm up your food, to cook it, child, to get your wine ready. Episode 2 of Bell Collective tonight on the Oprah Winfrey Network. I'm going to live tweet with you guys, and I'll see y'all there.